93% of military analysts surveyed last year said Japan would never deploy offensive strike capability in their lifetime. Every single one of them was wrong, and not just a little wrong, catastrophically, historically wrong. Because right now, in the spring of 2026, something is happening in the Pacific that no one in Beijing or Moscow actually prepared for. A country that spent 80 years telling the world it would never fight again just built one of the most lethal military networks on the planet. And it did it quietly, quickly, and completely under the radar of every foreign intelligence service that was supposed to be watching. We are not talking about a country rearming. We are talking about a country that rewired the entire Pacific balance of power in a matter of weeks. And if you want to understand why China's naval commanders are suddenly very nervous, why Putin's Pacific strategy just collapsed, and why the next 5 years in Asia look nothing like the last 50, stay with me, because this is the story no one is telling the way it actually happened. Hit the like button right now if you follow this region. It takes 1 second and it tells me to keep going deeper on stories like this one. Let's start where this really begins, not with Japan, with a decision made in Beijing that turned out to be the most expensive miscalculation of Xi Jinping's entire career. For 2 decades, China's military doctrine operated on a core assumption. Japan was the soft underbelly of the American alliance system, the one ally that would always hesitate, the one partner that constitutional constraints, political culture, and the weight of wartime guilt would keep permanently on the sidelines. China's strategy in the Pacific, its entire anti-access and area denial architecture, was built around that assumption. Control the sea lanes, surround Taiwan, pressure the first island chain, and count on Japan to protest diplomatically while doing absolutely nothing that matters. Beijing pushed that assumption hard. Unmanned underwater vehicles shaped like manta rays, silent and autonomous, deployed into the East China Sea, waters China does not own. Dual carrier operations in March 2026, the Liaoning and the Shandong operating simultaneously in the Pacific, 2 carrier groups moving in tandem as a direct message to Tokyo. Then the air provocations, Chinese J-16 fighters and H-6 bombers violating Japan's air defense identification zone so frequently around Okinawa and the Miyako Islands that Japan was scrambling F-15s and F-2s on an almost daily basis. China was testing, probing, looking for the line and betting Japan would never hold it, and then Japan held it. Not with a statement, not with a UN resolution. On March 28, 2026, 48 fifth-generation F-35A stealth fighters touched down on Japanese soil, deployed from the United States in a single coordinated operation. 48 aircraft that China's most advanced radar systems, including the arrays mounted on its Type 055 destroyers, struggle to detect until it is far too late. Here is something you need to sit with for a second. The F-35A's radar, the ANAPG-81, sees China's most advanced stealth fighter, the J-20, as clearly as a flashlight in a dark room. Engine exhaust signatures, wing structure, thermal bloom. The J-20 pilot thinks he is invisible. The F-35 pilot already has a weapons lock from 200 kilometers away. That is not an advantage. That is a one-sided conversation the other side does not even know they are having. Now, here is where everything changes, because the deployment location is not just a base. It is a message written in steel and jet fuel that changes the math for 2 countries at once. Misawa Air Base sits on the northern tip of Honshu, inside the first island chain, the critical defensive arc that contains China's naval ambitions in the western Pacific. It is hardened, it is fortified, it is surrounded by Type 3 and Type 81 surface-to-air missile batteries and F-16 squadrons providing perimeter defense. And from Misawa, carrying advanced joint strike missiles inside the fuselage to preserve stealth, those F-35As can reach Qingdao, Yantai, the ports where China's aircraft carriers, the pride and centerpiece of the People's Liberation Army Navy, sit at anchor. China spent billions on those carriers. Years of construction, sea trials, propaganda, and now they are sitting in port within the operational strike envelope of aircraft they cannot track. But the air story is only the first layer, and this is the part that most coverage is missing entirely. While the F-35 deployment was dominating the headlines, Japan was simultaneously activating a ground-based missile network that changes the rules of engagement across the entire region. On March 31, 2026, the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force put its first domestically produced long-range strike systems into operational service. Type 12 missiles, upgraded to a range of 1,000 kilometers, deployed to Camp Kokubu in Kyushu. Type 25 ship-to-surface missiles, also at 1,000-kilometer range, deployed to Camp Kokubu simultaneously. And at Camp Fuji in Shizuoka, hypersonic glide vehicles, HVGP systems, weapons that travel faster than the speed of sound on unpredictable maneuvering trajectories, specifically engineered to defeat the most advanced air defense networks China and Russia have fielded. You cannot intercept something you cannot predict. You cannot shoot down a weapon flying a path that changes mid-flight at hypersonic speed. That is the whole point. And while those systems were going online, Japan was doing something else entirely down in the Ryukyu Island chain, the arc of islands that sweeps southwest from the Japanese mainland directly toward Taiwan. Anti-ship missile batteries deployed to Yonaguni, to Miyako, to Amami-Oshima. These islands sit directly across the sea lanes that Chinese naval forces would need to transit to project power into the open Pacific. Any Chinese fleet moving toward Taiwan now faces layered missile threats firing from multiple directions at the same time. There is no clean corridor. There is no safe route. The geography has been turned into a weapon. Then came the sea. March 27, 2026, the integration of American-produced Tomahawk cruise missiles onto the Japanese destroyer Chokai was successfully completed. The Chokai is a 9,500-ton Congo-class destroyer. It returned from months of modification in the United States with the ability to strike land targets at 1,600 kilometers with pinpoint accuracy. 1,600 kilometers from a Japanese destroyer puts targets deep inside the Chinese mainland within reach. It puts Russia's Pacific Fleet headquarters at Vladivostok within reach, and it is just the beginning. All 4 Congo-class destroyers will receive the same upgrade. 4 destroyers, each one capable of launching Tomahawks 1,500 kilometers in any direction, operating alongside F-35s China cannot see, backed by hypersonic missiles on land. And beneath all of it, here is the dimension that almost nobody is talking about right now, Japan's submarine force. Japan has spent years building what experts increasingly describe as one of the most acoustically silent submarine fleets on the planet. The newest boats run on lithium-ion battery technology that allows them to remain completely submerged, essentially undetectable for days at a time. 12 Soryu-class submarines already in service are being progressively upgraded with the same technology. These boats are optimized for the shallow, complex acoustic environment of the Western Pacific, exactly the waters where Chinese surface groups would need to operate. You cannot outnumber a submarine you cannot find. Now pull back and look at all of it at once. F-35As invisible to radar hunting from the north. Carrier-based F-35Bs that can be anywhere in the Pacific within hours. Because yes, Japan also converted its 2 largest warships, the Izumo and the Kaga, into light carriers capable of operating F-35Bs. The flight decks reinforced, the hangars reconfigured, each ship carrying up to 12 stealth fighters in combat configuration. Put the numbers together, 48 F-35As from Misawa, up to 24 F-35Bs from the Izumo and Kaga. potentially more than 70 fifth-generation stealth aircraft operating in coordinated real-time through the F-35's shared sensor network, each one feeding targeting data to all the others. While on the ground, Type 12 and Type 25 missiles cover Chinese ports. While at sea, Tomahawk-equipped destroyers can strike 1,600 kilometers in any direction. While beneath the surface, Japan's submarines are already on patrol. China's entire strategic doctrine, 2 decades of investment, trillions of yuan, the entire A2AD architecture was designed to push American forces out of the Western Pacific. It was never designed to handle this, because the fundamental premise was always that Japan would not be part of the equation in any meaningful way. That premise just died loudly, and Beijing is only now calculating what that actually costs them. But I want to make sure you understand something about Vladimir Putin right now, because nobody is connecting these dots. Putin has been running a Pacific strategy in parallel to everything happening in Ukraine. The Kuril Islands, the chain stretching between Japan's northern tip and Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, have been systematically fortified for years. New missile batteries, military infrastructure, an attempt to build an impregnable northern flank protecting Russia's Pacific Fleet at Vladivostok and giving Moscow strategic leverage over Japan from above. That strategy was calibrated against the old Japan, the passive Japan, the Japan that would watch Russia reinforce the Kurils and file a formal complaint with the Foreign Ministry. Misawa Air Base is geographically close to the Kuril Islands and Russia's Pacific coastline. Those 48 F-35As are not only pointed south at China, they are pointed north at Russia simultaneously. Russian Su-35 pilots flying patrol routes over the Kurils, projecting Moscow's strength in the region, are now operating in airspace where they can be tracked, targeted, and engaged by aircraft they have no ability to detect. The Su-35 is an extraordinary fourth-generation fighter. Thrust vectoring, exceptional maneuverability. None of that matters if you do not know the threat exists. An F-35A pilot can lock a weapons solution on an Su-35 from hundreds of kilometers away, while that Russian pilot believes his situational awareness is solid and his airspace is clean. Putin built the Kuril fortifications to threaten Japan from the north. He woke up in 2026 to discover that the northern flank now threatens him. What Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin both failed to account for is something that should have been obvious from history, from economics, from simple logic. A country with Japan's industrial capacity, technological depth, professional military culture, and treaty alliance with the United States does not stay passive forever. You can push a nation of 125 million people with the world's third largest economy and centuries of military tradition only so far before the political calculus shifts. China pushed consistently, aggressively, repeatedly, and Japan's answer was not a speech. It was not a resolution. It was 48 stealth fighters, operational hypersonic missiles, Tomahawk-armed destroyers, converted aircraft carriers, a missile archipelago across the Ryukyus, and the deepest military integration with the United States since the Korean War. Defense analysts have started using a phrase to describe what Japan has built, a steel crescent. An arc of interconnected, mutually reinforcing military capability that now presses against China from the north, the east, and the south simultaneously, compressing the strategic space Beijing spent 20 years trying to expand. China's playbook was quantity. Build more ships, build more aircraft, build more missiles, win through mass. But quantity does not solve stealth. Quantity does not solve a weapon you cannot track. Numerical superiority is not a useful concept when the adversary you are trying to overwhelm already has a targeting lock on you from 200 kilometers away in every direction. And here is where this ends, for now. Japan's defense industry is accelerating across every category. The F-35 fleet is growing, missile ranges are extending, the submarine force is modernizing, and every system being built is being designed to interoperate with U.S. forces at a level of integration that did not exist 3 years ago. China picked the one country in Asia it thought would never fully rearm. The one ally it calculated would remain constrained by its own history. The one nation it believed would always choose diplomacy over deterrence. They were wrong about Japan once before. In the 1930s, the world made the same mistake in the other direction, assumed Japan was smaller, weaker, less capable than it turned out to be. History does not repeat, but sometimes it reloads. Subscribe right now if you want to be here when the next move happens, because this situation is moving fast, and the next development could come any day. And tell me in the comments, does China back down and recalculate, or does this compression in the Pacific push us toward something no one can walk back from? I want your actual take, not the comfortable answer. The Pacific just changed, and the country that changed it spent 80 years telling everyone it never would.